and the rest of it. And I fully agree that this cannot be imposed by the United States or any other country. But we do not have democracy in Iraq now, and we won't.
Lady in the front row.
Mr. Galloway, you said that the answer is the formation of one Shab Arabi. But with so many conflicts within the Arab world itself, how do you suggest that these conflicted nations put their differences aside and form this ideal Shab?
It's my argument that it's dictatorship which has created this situation. Sykes-Picot, in the building where I have sat for 20 years, with their pencils, invented all these mini countries. And they chose, in those days, corrupt kings, now added to puppet presidents, to put in charge of these mini states. But I have traveled the Arab world over and over, from the Atlantic to the Gulf, and it is one people, with one language, believing in one God. And its potential...
And fighting wars against each other.
Yes, because the dictators fight wars, and the imperialist countries want them to fight wars. Why do they sell them weapons? Why did Saudi Arabia buy billions of pounds worth of weapons from Britain? Who are they going to fight? They're going to fight Israel? No. The reason for the division is the dictatorships. And the key is democracy. If the Arab people were free, they would elect free governments that would govern their countries in the interests of their own people and not in the interests of the others.
Okay, let's take a question from up there. Gentleman up there.
Do you think that democracy is going to end the violence, especially if democracy is led by the US?
Adnan Pachachi, let me bring you in here.
Well, you see, let me begin by saying this. We heard somebody saying maybe a benign dictator. My answer is, how can you guarantee that he's going to remain benign? We know very well that dictators, that's what experience has shown. Dictators cling to their power tenaciously and will not give up voluntarily, and they'll use every means at their disposal, every brutal means to stay in power. So you cannot really gamble that a dictator is benign and he's going to remain benign and will be completely free of personal ambitions.
Well, that doesn't answer my question. You talked about dictatorship. I was talking about democracy.
Yeah, but I haven't finished.
But it's not like if we don't have if we don't have democracy, then the answer would be dictatorship.
You said, can democracy end the violence? Yes, I think probably democracy has a better chance of ending the violence than a dictator who is imposed by a foreign power.
Hasn't done so well so far. George Galloway, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, you don't know me well if you think I'm advocating the US as a model for democracy. Now, my point is this. The outcome of the revolution in Iraq, of the national liberation struggle in Iraq, if it is to just produce a dictatorship, it will not have been worth the blood. It will not have been worth the trouble. But if the national liberation struggle in Iraq leads to the rout of the invaders, which I believe that it will, and it is replaced by a government of the people, for the people, by the people, elected by the people, removable by the people, that would be a real beacon for the whole of the Arab world.
I totally agree with you, but is that going to happen in the next few months, where we can end the violence currently?
I'll tell you this, it will never happen if you agree now to a new dictatorship in Iraq.
All right.
Because the one thing I agree with Dr. Pachachi on is that once you get a dictator in, however benign he says he is at the beginning, he'll stay a long time and he won't be benign by the end.
All right, we're going to move on to a lady in the third row there, please.
Good evening. I wanted to ask the motion for this, the party for, a country which is already forced and which is shattered. Can you think by dictatorship it can be changed?
Liberation movement need leadership. Dictator, by its nature, it is leadership. Now, you could have, I know we've said about benign and what have you, but liberation requires leadership. Muhammad in Islam, he was a leader. Mao Zedong in China was a leader. You can name anybody. You cannot have a liberation movement by consensus. Some people put papers in a letterbox and they decide whether it's going to have, we liberate the country. That's why you need the leadership. The leadership, I am not advocating a man. I don't know what arrangement there is, but there must be something which is not coming out of the postal box when you are talking about liberation. This is the leadership they require. Democracy is a management. It's when you have something which is working, functioning, then you have a process, how you do things. You have ministers, you call them in and you ask them and they have to reply and they have to do this. But liberation movement, the army is not based on democracy. There's no army in the world where the army officer will ask the soldiers, should we go this way or that way? That's not how it works. You have a leader who orders and people work until you get there. And then after that, they may assassinate the leader. They may kick him out, as Britain did with Churchill. He took them to the war, he won the war, and immediately after the war, the process back again, Churchill was thrown in the rubbish bin.
All right, perhaps we can hear from some of the Iraqis. I know there are quite a few Iraqis in the audience here. Would some of them like to put up their hands? Are you from Iraq? Perhaps you'd like to